Hey, Senator, how are you this morning?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you very much, and thanks for giving us a few minutes of your time today. It's
Of
another
course.
busy week in Washington. I'm sure you're quite busy, but I'd like to start today talking about the Roger Stone case and the Department of Justice, and it seems like 4 prosecutors left after Trump tweeted he thought the 7 to 9 year sentencing recommendation was unfair, and now apparently the Trump president has either tweeted or said that he has the absolute right to intervene in these kinds of affairs if he wants to. What do you say to that?
I say it's completely inappropriate. We need to let the Department of Justice exercise the vision of equal justice under law, let the prosecutors do their job. And in this case, you're talking about an individual who broke his agreement with the prosecutors, who perjured himself multiple times, and who threatened the life of a federal judge. These are extraordinarily serious acts, and the prosecutors were right to recommend an appropriate related sentence.
Do you think that there should be a judiciary committee investigation into the DOJ and into how this all happened?
I don't know if an investigation is necessary. I mean, we're quite aware of the broad outlines, which is a president who wants to benefit friends, kind of the way a king would reach in and determine the sentences for people. This is part of the imperial presidency, and this is a president who feels he can do anything before the impeachment trial, and after the rigged impeachment trial, now has that affirmed, and I think we're going to see more of this.
We could talk more about that, but there's some other topics I'd like to talk with you about. The president released his budget last week, and I must admit I'm not a budget expert, but it looks like he wants to cut $4.4 trillion in spending over the next decade by slashing Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and offering more tax cuts. Is that pretty much correct? And if so, what do you say about that?
Well, what we have seen is this is a president who says he's working for working people, but then when he did his 2017 tax bill that cost $2 trillion, he sent that money to the richest Americans. And they did not invest in education and housing and health care, and we see more of the same here. We see a disinvestment in rural and frontier America and in the fundamentals for families to thrive. So this budget is, like the ones that have preceded it, in a bipartisan fashion, dead on arrival.
So it has no chance of becoming law as planned, or as proposed. Is that
That's
correct?
right. The Republicans will ignore it, as will the Democrats.
The Republicans will ignore it too. Why will the Republicans be opposed to parts of this?
Well, just take, for example, so many Republicans represent rural districts, and this does great damage to rural programs, rural water programs, rural infrastructure programs, rural business support, rural health care. So it's something that makes them extremely uncomfortable. And I've seen from the Appropriation Committee, they will not be touting the president's numbers. They will be running away from those numbers.
We could let's talk about something that you're doing that's moving forward today. You're part of a plastics bill that's going to be introduced in D.C. today. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, so this is breaking away from plastics, and one of the top 2 sponsors of this, Tom Udall, is the lead from New Mexico. This has in it a national bottle recycling bill, which is near and dear to my heart, with Oregon being the first in the nation to have a recycling bill. And when I was here as an intern over 40 years ago, I was on the floor watching when Senator Hatfield introduced a national bottle recycling bill. But it takes even a broader approach than that. It says this single-use plastic is poisoning us in all kinds of ways. You know, each of us, through our food and breathing, ingest the equivalent of a credit card of plastic each week. And the chemicals that are in these plastics are endocrine disruptors, so they can contribute to health problems, including breast cancer and prostate cancer. Plus, just it has a huge impact on our natural world, on the environmental world. And it's this single-use plastic, it's a menace in many ways. We need to take it on. We need to turn off the tap, not just simply kind of pull a little bit out of the water, but turn off the tap in terms of the massive amounts of plastic flowing into our air and water.
So this bill is just going to be introduced today, and what are your? You've been very honest before, and I've asked you these kind of questions. Do you think this has a chance of becoming law or moving forward?
This bill does not have a chance in the Senate. Partly the Senate is rigged in its representation in such a fashion that the plastics lobby has enormous influence. It has a better shot of gaining traction in the House and hopefully in a future Senate. But we're laying out a comprehensive vision here. When people think of plastics, they think, well, we can just do a little more recycling. And there's kind of this phrase, the 3 R's, reuse, recycle, and there's one other R in there as well. But really what's happening is the 2 B's. Plastic is being buried and it's being burned. It's being buried in the soil, it's being buried in the water at sea, and it's being burned unhealthy in every possible way.
And finally, because I know you have other things to do, you have any thoughts about the New Hampshire primary results last night?
Well, it was a terrific night for certainly for Bernie, for Mayor Pete, and for Amy Klobuchar. They're pretty excited right now going into the next contest in Nevada.
Do you think the Oregon primary is going to play a role in actually helping to decide who the nominee is?
You know, it's so fascinating because we come late. We come in May. Super Tuesday now has so many people. That's March 3rd, and that's just 3. So we go to Nevada, and then we go to South Carolina, and then we go to Super Tuesday. And at that point, there'll still be 2 or 3 people competing. By the time Super Tuesday happened 4 years ago, essentially Hillary won and defeated Bernie in the primary, Bernie Sanders. But this time it's more likely that it'll still be up in the air when it comes to Oregon. We might actually see these candidates bringing their swarms of volunteers into our state.
Well, that would be great. Well, Senator, thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time today. I will talk with you again next week.
Thank you, Tim.